The 2020 Minority Health Film Festival offers a diverse variety of films and events that we just wouldn't be able to offer in the in-person cinema experience. But I think what really makes it unique is the focus not only on public health issues, but the issues that really concern communities of color. If you're looking for a reason to engage or to try it out, this is the perfect time. Just go to mkefilm.org/MHFF.
Welcome to the 14th day of the Minority Health Film Festival presented by Froedtert and the Medical College of Wisconsin. I'm so excited to be the panelist for this evening's conversation. We've been here, amplifying voices of women of color, and we'll be talking about a whole lot of things. So I'm so excited for our panelists who will be entering now. Hey, y'all.
Hi.
The joke has been made. The group chat has now gone live. I'm here with my people, with my folks. So I'm so excited for this conversation. Right away, I wanted, before we begin, while you all are here, just to acknowledge the energy that we're all bringing into the space. We found out about what the courts have decided regarding the murder of Breonna Taylor. That's been a part of our conversation, our hearts, our thoughts, not just today, but in the months, the 150 some days since she was murdered. We've been carrying some of that energy with us. So I just want to recognize that as we enter into this conversation, that it is an emotionally charged one, one that is really, really connected to how we show up every day, and not just about this feels or looks good. This is really about lives. This is about lives. They are murdering Black women, and our participation in the system has everything to do with what we can do about it. So I'm just centering that in the conversation, holding that, and knowing that we send abundant love to all the people who are fighting on Breonna's behalf in Louisville and across the country, sending so much love to all those organizers that we are in personal conversation with. So to get started, I would love if everyone could talk a little bit about who they are and what they do to live their truth in this world, right? In particular, these organizations that you all come to represent, and the work that you're doing to really amplify your voice and the voice of other Black women and women of color in the spaces that you're in. So I want to start with Zion. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Zion Rogers. I'm blessed to be sharing the space with you all because you all are like great, so great. And so thank you for this opportunity and allowing me to share space with you. I am 16 years old. I am a junior at Rufus King High School. I am also founder and lead organizer of the MKE Youth Power Alliance and also member of Urban Underground, which is headed by the amazing Miss Charlotte Moore. I've been involved in activism and organizing since I was like 11 or 12 years old. I kind of got started off after like kind of witnessing the Trayvon Martin verdict, and so that did something to me when I was that age. And also I was blessed to be brought up in a household where Black radical traditions like Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism, I kind of learned to borrow some of the values from those traditions. And just kind of those have really inspired a lot of the activism work I do today for Black women and Black women and women of color, period, because just helping them appreciating some of those traditions, but also recognizing that there is patriarchy within them. And so just kind of helping them find their voice within. So
you're muted.
Sorry. In case you haven't noticed, Zion is our collective nominee for president. So whatever Zion says, we are about that life. But I also want to uplift. She talked about, getting involved around the Trayvon Martin verdict, that being really powerful for her. And that leads to sort of how Tracy and I are connected, because that had a lot to do with where we first began to organize together. And so, Tracy, would you mind introducing yourself and talking about the work that you do?
Yeah. So first, just so much gratitude to be able to be in the same space with y'all collective brilliance, and bring the group chat to life. And so my name is Tracy Sheeher. I am based in Oakland, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, always repping. And I work at the Action Center on Race and the Economy, or ACRE, which is an organization that works at the intersection of Wall Street and racial justice. And it has been a journey to get here. I started off my career as a social worker, and that's when I met Mo. And I remember I was so in awe of Mo because of the way she walked into a room and her commanding presence. We were working on a project together, and Mo was out of town. And so it was the day that they were going to execute a man in Atlanta. And so we called Mo to make sure that we could go to this rally. So and so I say that because I think about the power and the weight that Black women have for me. I have so much reverence for Black women. And so when I think about how I'm able to show up in my authentic self, it is because Black women have lifted me up and told me I was worth it and that my leadership was important. There's this thing that we say, we all we got. And I'm trying to reframe that, because that's not a deficit. What we have is each other, and that is more than enough. We deserve more, but we are so much already. And so I'm just excited to get into this discussion with y'all and talk more about all of the ways that we show up and all of the ways that we're more than enough.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. And in case you haven't already, there is a world famous podcast that Tracy and Shavonda are the co-hosts of. And I saw Tracy post she was doing this podcast. I'm like, who this girl? Who this girl that Tracy out here doing this stuff with? And that is how I met Shavonda. If you ask either one of us what actually brought us together, we don't know. The spirit said, y'all be sisters, and we said, okay. And so, Shavonda, would you mind introducing yourself to the people?
Absolutely. I am so excited to be here. When I was first approached about doing this panel and I saw the names, I was like, and you want me? Absolutely. These are the people that I quote when I'm on panels. And so if you hear me snatching the words out of your mouth, I do it all the time. I am sure to credit you, because I've learned so much from every woman on this panel. My name is Shavonda Sisson, and my pronouns are she, hers. I wear lots of hats. One of the most important is that I am a mother. And I never thought in my life that I would lead any introduction with saying that I'm a mother and centering that sacred work of raising children. I have 3 sons. 2 of them just turned 18 a few days ago. So I am learning what it means to transition into being the mother of adults, or adults-ish, right? Because they're babies, right? They're 18, they're still babies. But then also, what does that look like when your children transition into a next stage and wanting them to be able to define for themselves what life is for them, right? That is freedom. To be able to define for yourself what life is going to be for you, but then also understanding that I have raised them since before they were born to understand that as a Black person, they do have a role in this fight for liberation, and that in my home, when I ask who do we protect and who do we, take care of, they know the response is Black women, right? When my children can say to me, oh, my second favorite Black woman is Dr. Monique Liston, right? I know that I am doing my work over here. And so, but also wanting them to be able to define for themselves, what is it in life that is for them, right? And while I have taken on this work, is that their work, right? Because I've taken it on and because they've had to interact with it since birth. One of my additional roles is I am the founder of Love on Black Women, which is my 4th child. I figured out one day that what I do really, really well is I love fiercely, I love widely. And my love is not a gentle whisper. My love is like pull up, like who I need to pull up on. That's how my love is expressed. And so with Love on Black Women, I am able to um, just use the gifts that came very naturally. I have the gift of gab. I have the gift of building and maintaining relationships. And like how I've been able to lean into that in like my love and support of Black women. And Milwaukee has embraced my pet project. It has grown so much over the last year, as social conditions has dictated that it's needed to grow. And I am excited to be here. I'm gonna make sure this goes on film. I'm really just here to set a period at the end of everything Zion says. Um, I have been enamored with Zion since I saw her on a panel, at Black Lives Matters in School panel. I think that was the first year. And I was like, I don't know who this is, but she got my vote. I don't care what she's running for, homecoming queen, president, it don't matter. Yes, my vote is going in that direction. So I'm super excited to be here. Like I feel like I'm in the room with like 3 Beyonce. So this is great. Great.
3 Beyoncés? Y'all understand
three
this?
Beyonces, okay?
I just want to affirm for all the folks watching and commenting. We can see comments, so we appreciate all the feedback and things that you share. We are also, Black women are about that life and about that business. So we're trying to break a Milwaukee film record. So share this so we can get as many viewers as possible in the room, because we want people to, we want Milwaukee Film to see that Black women do this, okay? Black women do this. You put us at the center and we will break records. With that being said, today's panel questions are about 2 of the films that were in the film festival, and She Could Be Next, parts 1 and 2. So if you haven't watched it, make sure that you sign up on Milwaukee Film to watch that. And Radical Monarchs, which is also awesome. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. Our first set of questions are about And She Could Be Next, which is really thinking about the role of women of color in electoral politics. And I want to start, of course, all my questions are probably going to start with Zion, because we center youth voice. We prioritize young black women because they are the leaders that we need to be following. But at the beginning of And She Could Be Next, Stacey Abrams shares a story about being the valedictorian and then being called to go to the governor's mansion. And she talks about her family pulling up, and the security is like, this is a private event. You can't come in here. And her dad is like, hold on, though. My daughter is who's going to be honored. Like, get it right. And the security eventually finds her name on the list, and then lets her in. And then the movie then pans to a young Stacey Abrams speaking on C-SPAN. And I saw that and I was like, Zion! Like the similarities, the cadence, the tone, the energy. I'm like, this is it, baby girl. That's you. And so in that moment, I was thinking about, well, what is Zion's thoughts around running for political office? And so I'm wondering, based on what you know right now and what you've experienced, what are your thoughts around you one day running for political office?
Like when I seen this question, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy, because a lot of people that I've come in contact with, they always say, oh my God, you're the next president, you're the next mayor, run for mayor. And I like truly see value, and I definitely respect just witnessing Black women of color just in office. And I never want to knock the power of young women of color office, because I just think things can be reformed. Some things can be changed with our voices within the system. But as far as my core values and what I believe in, as far as complete liberation and reimagining things, working within a system could not totally reflect my ideas of liberation. Like, for example, my vision of creating independent institutions that challenge people to think critically about the oppression that we live amongst on a day-to-day basis, whether that be through film, medicine, or other non-capitalist philanthropy, building, accumulating wealth within the Black community. I don't think that some of my stances could fit within the box of working in the system, but I do see value in it for sure.
We are behind that all the way, Zion. 100, 100, 100. Thank you so much. And of course, those of you watching, you understand why we behind Zion. Whatever she says, we do. Y'all. And we also have the pleasure and the honor to have somebody who was actually featured in the film to be here on the panel as well. And so, Tracy, I first want to ask you to talk a little bit about the part of the film that you were featured in. You were working on Glow Vote. And so if you could talk a little bit about, looking back at that time, that work, what you're thinking of it, what you're feeling about it now.
Yeah, I was thinking about Shavonda and that pull-up energy. And I was thinking about what you said about Stacey Abrams and Zion, and like all of that is real for me. So period to everything Zion said, I gotta add that. So Glow Vote was this idea that we had. So Stacey Abrams was running, and I was excited about her candidacy because she would be the first Black woman governor in this country ever. And so we know Black women have been doing the work. A lot of people have been shadow governors. A lot of people have been shadow presidents, shadow county supervisors, shadow aldermen, but not getting the credit for like the brilliance of being in these offices. And so when I saw Stacey Abrams, and this is somebody who said, I'm a fat Black woman with natural hair, I don't look like what you're used to. And that excited me. And I don't believe that symbolism or I don't believe all of that means like this representation means that we're going to get to liberation, but I do think that it's an important step. And so when I saw someone with my core values running for office on that platform, I wanted to be a part of it. And so I called Nsé Ufot, who is the executive director at New Georgia Project, and I said, I want to pull up. I want to like come and talk about how Black women exercise power to get in the candidate that we want to see in office. And so that's how Glow Vote was born. It was grassroots leaders organizing women. And so what it was like every day we would do voter outreach, but we would also do a cultural event in Atlanta. We love Atlanta. We always know that there is so much like beautiful Black culture, this like historical city. So we were touring churches, and we went to, MLK's memorial and the museum. And then we would do voter outreach. And at the end, we would do something fun. So we would do karaoke. We would build community together. And that was this way that we said we're running campaigns differently, and we're exercising power differently, and we're voting for someone who we believe in differently. And then when she gets elected, we're going to hold her accountable differently. And so it was my pleasure to be in that film. They made a GIF of me talking about mediocre white men. So it was really, really, just a crowning achievement of mine to be a GIF talking about mediocre white men.
I love it. And also, if I were to quote Tracy Porter from the film, people want Black people, but they don't want Black experiences. And you center that into like why we're doing it this way is like we're putting our experience right up with our vote. So you need to also engage that. Would you mind talking a little bit about, real quickly, because you're the only person on the panel who has run for office, can you talk a little bit about reflecting back on that a few years ago, and what you're thinking about now?
Yeah, so I ran for Milwaukee County Supervisor, and it was this amazing experience that I'm so glad I didn't win. My politics, my politics are now what Zion said, which is funny because I had to grow as an adult into what Zion just put out, which is that I feel like my place is to disrupt the system. And I respect people who are within the system. But when I think about electing people, I think about electing targets, not electing friends. Mm-hmm. And that's hard because you do like people like Stacey Abrams. I like people like AOC and Rashida. I really like Ayanna Pressley. Like I look at her and I'm like, Ayanna Pressley is dope. But if they step out of line, then we have to be able to hold them accountable. And the reality is, in order to do their job well, they have to step out of line because their job is to uphold white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism. And so we can like people within this system and understand that the system doesn't work for us. And so I'm glad I had this opportunity to run for office. I can say I did it. And I can understand and like respect candidates. And I can like talk people through like how to work with candidates. But I am grateful that I did not win so that I could grow into the person I am now that sits on this panel with y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that reflection. Can't wait to come back to think about some of those thoughts of what that means for this upcoming election as well. Shavonda, you brought up at the beginning your role or your awareness of your role as mother. And one of the reasons, I'm not a mother myself, but one of the reasons I really admire your work, Shavonda, is you say mother is the identity that you hold and prioritize, and that does not negate the fact that I'm a whole Black woman who has some things, ideas, and moves that I need to care for as well, which I think is a beautiful thing that not a lot of people talk about in the public sphere. And so in the movie, And She Could Be Next, you know, we see a lot of women who are mothers who are like trying to negotiate the work that they're doing and how they're showing up and what does that mean. We also know, you know, as we read or see the lives and read about the stories of so many civil rights leaders and how it impacted those children, right? How some of them are like, I'm not touching anything related to any of that radical stuff, or who are now like carrying on the torch and like doing the same sort of work. So I wanted you to reflect a little bit about being a mother who has built a really strong social justice framework and has been sharing that publicly. So I wanted you to talk about how motherhood, mothering, doing mothers has been a part of your work and your thought process.
Yeah. I think if my children were asked this question, they would lead with, my mom does too much, right? Does too much in all the things. And I think that has been twofold, right? It's been very good that my children know that my work is rooted in love. And if I am loving all the Black folks that we have never met as fiercely, how much more fiercer is my love for you, right? And like my greatest desire is for my children to understand the depth of the love that I have for them. And my biggest job, my biggest role is to labor in the expression of that. And also a part of that, I have raised children that are also quick to figure out how to solve their own problems, right? Because they don't want mom to pull up with the whole strength of the community behind me because they were accidentally marked absent in gym class, right? Like they know that's how I pull up every single time. But it's interesting you asked me to reflect on this because this is a constant reflection for me of wondering how much do I share? How much do I give them access to? How much do I pull back a little bit on their innocence? But also trying to like balance, like, when do I put certain parts of my identity and certain parts of my work down so that I can be fully present to be mom? And it's like, you never turn it off. I remember one particular time, my son Nicholas came home from game club, like super excited that he had beat a senior in playing this game. He was in game board club because my kids do exciting things, right? Game board club. So he was sharing how he had beat the senior at this game that required a lot of logic. And I said, oh, well, what was the senior's reaction after you beat him at this game? And at the time he was like a sophomore. He says, oh, he said, I was lucky. I'm like, huh? Was he white? And he's like, oh yeah, he was white. So I said, so how did you get lucky at a game that required logic? Like, there was no luck if it requires logic. And so I started to explain to him that what actually happened was racist. Like, this is a racist child, and he was discounting like your wit and your intelligence because you beat him at this game of logic. And I could see my son like shrink back, like, I shouldn't have told her. And he immediately came to the defense of his classmate. Because it's a hard thing to realize, right? That somebody who you have been in companionship with, that you think is a part of your community, is actually harmful, right? And so it's like, how much do I pull the veil back, and how much do I allow him to enjoy his time with his classmates, right? And like, how much do I taint his experience? But then also, I have a responsibility to tell my children the truth and to teach them so that they are not put in positions where a harm is bigger, right? Where a scar is deeper. Or I'm not there to help them unpack exactly what's happening. And on that day, I decided to let it rest, right? We have revisited it since then. Like, so remember that one time? But like as I reflect like what that looks like, it for me it's always a constant juggling and trying to figure out in the moment what is enough, what do I point out. One thing I'm really happy about is that I'm starting to see like the fruit of my labor in so many ways. Like we were playing another game and my son Oliver didn't know who Paul Revere was. And Nicholas says, "Oh, it's just some white man." And I was like, "Yes, that's it. Just some white man they didn't lie to you about." I'm doing my work. Like, and I felt like really good and proud in that moment. But it's a constant. And Monique, I don't feel like I gave you an answer because honestly, I don't know. Like it's moment by moment, it's situation by situation. It's a lot of modeling. Sometimes it's more talking. Sometimes it's just more doing. Sometimes it's just leaving things alone.
I love it. This is my dream that all these Black children are like, who that white person you talking to? I don't know them. I'm unfamiliar. What are they? I really appreciate that. We had a question that came up in the comments that is specific, but I do want to apply it to everyone. And it was about how would Glow vote, Tracy? What were the plans to hold Stacey Abrams accountable in new ways, right? What was that accountability gonna look like that was different from previous iterations? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for Glow vote, it was a little bit different, but I'm going to flip the question and talk about intervention I tried to pull on the presidential primary. So I was a part of a collective called Black Women For, and we did these meetups all over the country, and we talked to, I know Shavonda was at one of the meetups, and we talked about what intervention we wanted to see in the presidential race, because the way we're told voting works is be quiet, vote for the person who you think can win against the big bad evil over there, and then afterwards maybe they'll listen to you. And what we were saying is actually, no, we need to be in co-governance with people. People need to write policy that directly centers us. It's not, oh, this thing happens and Black people are impacted more. It is this thing, our country is racist. It does these things to hurt and harm Black people. And because of that, this needs to change. And so we tried to figure out which presidential candidate would be the most accountable to us. We know, as Kamala Harris is the VP, Kamala was running. And so I think she was the only woman of color in that field. But we ultimately went and endorsed Elizabeth Warren because she was the person who chose to be in relationship with us. And so we had these principles that said, we understand that to run the empire that is the United States, you're not going to be somebody we always agree with. And so we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for accountability. And so an example of accountability is she wrote a bill about farming, and Black farmers said, we don't see ourselves in that. And she said, oh, you know what? Let me take this back to the table. I'm going to meet with y'all, and then we're going to rewrite this bill together, and then re-released it. And so for us, and I think that when you look at Stacey Abrams, she was also someone who was willing to be in an accountable relationship with people. She was willing to be someone who listened to movement and said, okay, I'm going to move this way. And so she had accountability relationships with folks who were doing the work on the ground. And she wanted to co-govern with people. And that is something new. And I think that was something that I learned from Glow Vote, that we have to have somebody who is speaking our language. We have to have someone who is willing to say, I was wrong. Here are the ways I've addressed that harm. And here's who I worked with to address that harm. Because I don't get to harm people and then say, okay, I'm going to fix the harm myself. I actually have to listen to the people who were impacted and work with them to rectify it. And so that's how repair works. And so I think about my real through line that went from Glow Vote and understanding that from Stacey Abrams in this governor's race to like having this big, bold idea with a bunch of Black women and saying, we're going to try to make an intervention in the presidential race. And I'm really proud of that work. And I think that work needs to continue to grow and be a part of the way that we do our politics. Because back to Zion's point, I was about to cuss. Mo told me I couldn't cuss, so I'm not going to do it. None of this is for us. And so we have to figure out a way to change people's material conditions through this current flawed system while also dismantling it. Because I think about this all the time. I'm not going to get free without my mama. Like, that's not what freedom looks like for me. So if my mom is engaged in this system, I have to figure out a way to do what needs to be done for her through this system while also having conversation with her about how the system doesn't work for us. And so when I think about that, all of that together is what I think about when it comes to accountability for elected officials.
Thank you so much for that, Tracy. Zion, I want to turn to you off of that question and to utilize a question that's come through the comments. As a youth organizer and youth leader with a powerful voice, right? I want you to speak to what adults overall, but especially thinking about local electeds, which you have some touch points with, what and how their accountability to you as a young person should look like.
Well, really, just generally speaking, just giving us more room to lead and just share what we see as fit for us, because we often hear like, okay, conversations like things are changed within the system having to do with youth and things of that nature, but we aren't at the table. And I feel like I have to reiterate that a lot. But that's really essentially what adults can do for us, continue to make space for us to just come in and not take over, but just give our youthful energy and just infuse that into what you're doing, because we are the future adults. Things that may not affect us directly now will affect us in the future.
Absolutely. So. I want to shift the conversation a bit into reflecting on the movie Radical Monarchs, which I have been following Radical Monarchs since they were Radical Brownies. And I'm like, how do I join? Like, I don't want to lead a troop. I want to be in it. I want to be there, get my badge, and be like, I want to get, my down with the patriarchy button to say that I was in here with y'all. And so I want to shift into a conversation, but first I want to start with the grounding question. Shavonda, I'm going to start with you, but I want all of us to respond to it. What does radical mean to you?
These trick questions, right? Because I thought I knew what radical meant, right? Prior to a conversation I had just last week. But what radical means to me is not being okay with the status quo that is harmful, the status quo that is killing us, the status quo that is not allowing us to live uninterrupted. Radical is loving on folks, unapologetically loving on yourself out loud, prioritizing your own self-care, prioritizing the love of things that just make you feel good. I love Beyonce, right? And I don't want to endure all these think pieces about Beyonce. I just want to enjoy stuff. I almost cursed. I just want to enjoy stuff as a Black woman, right? That is radical. Having space, resting, playing, changing your lipstick 3 times a day, taking time for that is radical, because this world is telling me that I'm supposed to be using my labor and my talent and my wit to be about upholding capitalism, upholding, being productive, making money, doing all these things. Radical is just being left alone. Just leave Black women alone. Leave us alone. That's radical. Being left alone. I want to curse so bad, but being left alone. That's my final answer, but it might be different next week.
Completely fair. Tracy, same question. What does radical mean to you?
So radical for me shifts. And I think I know what it means, and then something happens, and then I'm like, oh no, that ain't radical no more. And so even when I see people in the chat say stuff like, we got to make room for Zion at the table, I'm like, that's not radical, y'all, because Zion's gonna make her way to the table. How are we making space for Zion's friends? How are we making space for folks who we don't think we don't see on panels? That's what's radical to me. I think about my relationship with abolition, because it's been a long time coming. I have long said that cops with consciences, with a conscience, should quit their job, and that's why I quit being a social worker. That's radical. When I started being a social worker, I thought I was radical. And I understood now how I was part of a carceral system. And so it is radical for me is like having this ability to move, shift, and grow around what people are saying. I think about even with today, I have tried to avoid like carceral language around the Breonna Taylor case because we shift and we think about justice for Breonna as like cops being in jail, like these particular cops in this particular case being in jail. And for me, that's not justice. That's not radical. Justice is Breonna Taylor going to work and us not knowing who she is. Right? Like that's what, and like loving up on her man and like being able to do all the things that she was doing prior to some, like the state coming in and murdering her. That's what justice looks like. And so our relationship is now actually with accountability. And accountability is actually not putting these three actors of the system that killed her in jail. It's actually dismantling the system. And like for me, a year ago, I would have been wearing a shirt that said jail killer cops. And now for me, I understand, and I understand how we have to find our justice and find our accountability within the current system. But I am saying that my work for Breonna Taylor, my work for Black women who have been killed, my work for Tony McDade, my work for Mike Brown is to dismantle the system that has been killing them. And so maybe in a week, maybe after Zion gives me some more knowledge, I'm going to be able to be a little bit more radical. But right now, that's what I'm talking about.
I need to turn my mic off so you could hear them snaps. And let me talk about how this chat just blew up, Tracy, while you were talking. It was like boom, boom, boom. Yes, yes, yes. Do the thing. Same question for you, Zion. What does radical mean to you?
Well, in my eyes, I view being radical, to be radical, is to be what really should be normal, deemed as normal. I feel like we live in a society where insanity and abnormality has been normalized. Like white supremacy is insane. It shouldn't be. And so I feel like being radical is radical thinking, and radical actions are what should already and always be. I'm going to give like an example. So yesterday, I'm only using this example because it was fairly recent. So yesterday, we were having a graded in-class discussion in my English class, and the discussion was centered around code switching and what that meant. And so I thought it was necessary to kind of offer a radical perspective because I noticed how the conversation was being dominated and shifted by white students who had surface level knowledge of what code switching was and what it meant to code switch. And so I had to step in while one of my white peers was speaking, and I typed in the chat. I feel like we need to leave more room for students who have to experience code switching on a much broader level, and in certain cases, life or death. And after that, I proceeded to say that I felt like the whole notion of code switch should be radicalized, considering that when you are a person of color in a white dominated space, linguistic profiling is a real thing. If you're not expressing yourself in a certain way, if you're not talking in a certain way, you're deemed as socially unacceptable, or what you're saying is just deemed as less credible. And I just feel like in instances like that, I just feel like we need to totally radicalize what code switching is, because it's really used as a tool of social mobility for people of color, and also a tool of survival. And I just feel that that's just like radical imagination, just imagining a world where we don't have to do that, what should already be.
Well, that's the end of. No, I'm just kidding. But period. No cap. Like that's it. I hope people are watching. Y'all get that's it. I know some of the folks who are watching will totally understand. John Henrik Clarke, Pan-African historian and scholar, is noted for saying in a famous debate, I only debate my equals, all others I teach. And so Zion, you embody that in the class. Like, we can debate, but you don't even get the situation. So I'm gonna teach you real quick about what's happening. So appreciate your thought there. What I also want to highlight in Radical Monarchs is that you are seeing young people engage in the learning process in ways that the system says can't happen, right? You see them circling up and like learning about, well, what does it mean to be queer? Okay, well, what do you think it is? What does it look like? And then they're comparing to their own experiences, and they're like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And I know that a lot of people feel threatened by us 4 women when we show up in conversation and say things, because people act as if what we know right now is what we've always known. And we know personally that we've gone through our own learning opportunities and learning struggles, and someone's correcting and redirecting us. And so I wanted us to share in a little form of a vulnerable moment to talk about really a part of your journey or a time or a memory where you learned about something that you now operate within now, right? I know Tracy talked a little bit about that around abolition. I know for me personally, there was a long and continuous journey around dismantling the gender binary, right? Because, I'm a girl and I'm a woman, and there's boys and there's men and there's people who are trans, and that's cool for them. It's kind of where I was operating at. And I remember personally, being like pushed against, like, what do you even think those things are associated with? Or the fact that we associate being a decent human being as being feminine, but being a productive human being as being male. And like noting the ways that I had embraced that ideology and needed to reverse some of that thinking. And particularly, like, we all know how it showed up in my language too. So I wanted to give you all a chance to just share a little bit about, like, nope, I had to learn that in real time from a real experience. Shavonda, would you be willing to start?
I was born woke, so I'm not really sure. I'm kidding. This is probably the easiest question you've asked, because I've had so many moments, right, of learning. And I think what I will share, and I talk about the most, is my journey from being a pick-me to the free Black woman that you see in front of you today, right? And for those that don't know, a pick-me is a woman that leans very very heavily into like gender binaries, right? And so, and also respectability politics as well. So a good woman does X, Y, Z. So I was a good woman. I stayed home. I read books. Okay. I spoke in full sentences. I was not twerking. I had skirts down to my ankles. And I also made it known for women that did not move in the ways in which I moved with my definition of womanhood, that they were wrong, right? And they were not the women that should be picked for relationships, for marriage, to women that should be protected, women that should be affirmed, women that should be listened to, right? And so I was harmful in the ways in which I expressed what I believed to be womanhood at the time. And my rude awakening came in the form of a man. Men are great teachers, right? If you don't let them talk too much, right? They're great teachers, right? If you watch them. So I was dating this man, right? And because I'm making ice cream from scratch, and I'm doing all the things that a good woman is supposed to do. Of course, this man is going to be here forever and ever, right? So one day it was a woman I had just met, and I was like, oh, she's so dope, all these great things. And he's like, oh, yeah, I heard things about her. And I'm like, huh, I thought you were cool with her too. And then it clicked in my head that these men want to keep the good girls from the bad girls, because if we get together, we'll figure out you're trying to make both of us your girl, right? And so in that moment, I realized that I am no better, no different than any of these other women that I have been working since I started dating to hold myself a part of, right? So what is this? This is a sham. And in that moment, I realized, it was such a quick realization that I am no different. So is this thing of like a good woman even real? And it took a lot of time and me listening to a lot of women that I didn't even realize at the time were radical Black feminists in their expression of like relationship and sexual autonomy and independence. And I didn't understand at the time they were my first time experiencing radical Black feminists and understanding what hood feminism was and all these things. I didn't have the language for it at the time. But it took me some time like to start to embrace that. And I still to this day am like, Facebook is the worst. Like Facebook will slap you in your face with your mess. So to this day, like I get these Facebook memories of me talking about I'm tired of seeing back shots, right? On profile pictures, or I'm tired of this, or I'm tired of that. So I think that has been my most public and continued lesson, because I'm not done with that lesson. And now as I'm starting to understand how my leaning into that gender binary and my leaning into what the expression of womanhood is supposed to be also was transphobic, right? And so I continue to unpack that and continue to pack my own transphobia. And now it shows up in different ways, right? So I have a trans woman who I love. This is one of my children. I love her dearly. And so my wanting to protect her from all the things, right? Taking away her autonomy and treating her in ways I was not treating other women in my life, and not trusting her to know what was good for her was also transphobic, right? Me saying, oh, I love you so much, I want to just put you in a bubble. I was denying her full expression of her personhood. And who am I, right? And so it still continues to be my lesson, because it still shows up, and it's still so easy to lead into that, because everything in society teaches me that what I thought, what did Zion say? That insanity, right? Everything affirms that insanity. So even now, after I've been picked, right, and I give my husband a hard time, but there are still people that affirm me for certain qualities, even though I'm not trying to still move in that way. But it's really easy to lean into it, because I even know now, because I speak a certain way, because I express myself a certain way, because I'm now married, there are people that invite me in spaces that they wouldn't have invited me into before. And so I have to call that out when I'm in those spaces, and I have to realize why some people are allowing me to be in certain spaces and to say certain things.
Thank you so much, Shavonda, because you really gave like a whole new meaning of what "and she could be next" could mean for some people. And I really, the note that you left on is something I want to uplift, because I definitely experienced this with these two letters in front of my name, right? I walk into a lot of rooms that I'm like, you're only allowing me to be here. When I was saying the same stuff 5 years ago and I didn't have these letters, I couldn't be here. I wasn't validated. I'm saying the same thing. I'm really not saying anything different, but now these two letters affirm me, and that's a problem. But also, if I'm going to enter in the room, and I know everybody in this panel has experienced it, everybody else get to come with me too. Okay, so if Dr. Monique Listen could be there, mamas, cousins, babies, anybody can speak, because you said I had the floor, and if I had the floor, the community got the floor. So dismantling some of that, of what it means to actually understand how these systems play us against each other, is really, really something that we need to be conscious of. Tracy,
and I think about that too, really quick for you transition.
Yeah.
I thought about that as I was getting ready, like the fact that Milwaukee Film has their logo around here means that people are going to listen to us differently than if they would if I was just talking my stuff on my regular Facebook page, where they don't feel as safe because Milwaukee Film has their logo.
We can still come at you in the comments later though, y'all. Tracy.
Because I'm cussing on my page, but and Monique told me I couldn't cuss here. So I would say that one of the relationships for me that continues to evolve is my relationship with capitalism and how it interacts with Black power. And so to like understand that building Black power does not mean existing within what white people define as success, because that's how I was raised. That you go to school, that you make this money, that you get this status, and then all of a sudden, like there's like this way or this like path to freedom, and understanding that owning a business and becoming rich is not how you get free. I talk a lot about how billionaires shouldn't exist. I remember the first time I tweeted that, and just all these people came back to me like, "You just mad because you broke." I mean, yes, and Like, billionaires still shouldn't exist. Like, this exists because of exploitation. That's not something I would have said 5-10 years ago. And I am constantly getting smacked in the face by people who check me and my privilege around that. And so I identify with a lot of what Shavonda said, but I think my relationship between capitalism and Black power is the biggest way that I have grown and the biggest way that I am still growing.
Thank you, Tracy. Zion, talk about it.
So something that I definitely had to wrestle with, and I'm still kind of unlearning as far as what is deemed as beautiful. You know, we live in a world where westernized ideologies of beauty have consumed the minds of a lot of people. And I just feel like if we, having like radical thought, okay, small features, European features, those are deemed as beautiful. And for so long growing up, I was surrounded by parents that often uplifted and celebrated Black beauty. But I mean, what I was seeing in media all the time was just these forced notions of looking a certain way, having light skin, having European features, being a tool of social mobility. Like those things will help you in the future. And so having to kind of come to terms with that has definitely been a struggle for me, as far as like looking. I often caught myself when I was little, just kind of uplifting and pointing out the beauty of women that society would deem as more beautiful. And so having to unlearn that, I've definitely come a long way. So
I will fight anybody who is out here making you feel anything less than another Beyonce. Okay, so you got your whole auntie crew will show up and be like, "What's your problem? You don't even know what beautiful. Your eyes broken. You don't even know what beautiful is." So just letting you know who that energy came up. My bad, but I wanted to address that. We will pull up on site if for that. But thank you for sharing that, because I definitely identify with that. As we are wrapping up, I have a couple more questions. And again, if you want to drop any questions into the chat, we are happy to integrate them into our conversation. I want to uplift something that I feel like has been on the outskirts of this conversation, but I want to bring it right here live. As someone who has been a part of the Milwaukee Film Festival for a number of years, and really appreciates so much work that Milwaukee Film is doing, I know that there has been a lot of conversation on our social media pages about two things regarding language. One, why is this called the Minority Health Film Festival? And two, why is this panel called Woman of Color? And I know that these are not words that any of us would have chosen to label the film festival. I mean, they didn't ask us or to talk about these films. So I wanted us to speak to a little bit around this language, how it made you feel, and how you wanted to disrupt it. One, the title Minority Health Film Festival, and two, being the panel focusing on women of color. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what you were thinking there. Shavonda, are you ready to start?
I am ready. Y'all know when I first saw it, I was like, "What is called women of color?" We capital B Black over here. My planned disruption was to acknowledge the fact that we had an all Black panel and nothing was altered, like in the language, like Black wasn't used. And I do know that, when you have people who are paying bills and keeping the lights on, right, you do things to keep people comfortable. But I also live by the creed that if I'm uncomfortable, everybody's uncomfortable, which is why I am also not fit to run for office. Zion was explained that beautifully. I'm like, I like to fight, so I'm not fit to run for office. I'm just not fit. So my plan to interrupt it was to talk about, you named it, right? And so when you said that nobody asked us, that was the first mistake. You have all of these brilliant Black women and femmes and non-binary folks that are right here that you could ask about this, and we have not been asked. And when we talk about who needs to be centered in these conversations, it is the folks that are most marginalized by these systems that need to be centered, because we know the answers. So it's been not interrupted but disrupted, because we were talking about it. I also saw comments to the side like about the Minority Film Festival. Y'all got some work to do, Milwaukee Film, with what you are labeling, because words mean things, and so y'all do have some work to do, and I'm sure y'all are interested in being held accountable. That's why y'all invited us here. So that's y'all work. Y'all got some time. So
Tracy, you want to speak to that question?
So first I want to say Shavonda is definitely fit to run for office. I think that we need more people who want to disrupt it and go be one term, because part of the problem with office is that people are constantly running for re-election. So Shavonda, if you want to pull up, mess it up, and then like leave, let's do it. Let's run for office. Let's get you in there. Let's disrupt it all. And then what this just came to mind for me is like how even Black women put work off of other Black women. I knew I didn't have to disrupt this, because I knew you would, Mo. Like I was like, oh yeah, Monique will say something about this. Like I didn't even think twice about it. And my relationship with the word minority is always funny to me, because I grew up on the north side of Milwaukee in 53206. 53206 for real. Because right now we hear a bunch of people talk about they from 53206, and I ain't seen a lot of people in the hood.
Talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, Lindbergh Park. I remember people's parents used to drop me off and be like, "You live on what in Keith?" And I'd be like 16th, 16, and they didn't want to drop me off. So it's a lot of folks who be talking about they from 53206 and they're not. But anyway, I didn't know that Black people were a minority. I was like old when I found it. I was like, wait, but it's us. It's more of us than I was like, oh, it's more that got it. Because Milwaukee's so segregated, I didn't even really understand like why we were called minorities. So my relationship with the word is different. I saw it, I kind of rolled my eyes and kept it pushing, because that's how, nonprofit world works. That's how all of this works. And then for the women of color, like when I promoted this on my own channels, I was like, yeah, it's a bunch of Black women, y'all. And that was it. And so I have found ways to do loud and quiet disruptions of language. And I think I was probably just more quiet around this one.
Zion, what are your thoughts?
There we go. Okay. So I just feel kind of just going off of what you all said. I just feel like the whole notion and language of people of color and women of color is kind of regressive and also blanketed anti-Blackness, because in order to truly mobilize and work toward true liberation, we have to acknowledge and recognize that the Black issues and Black struggles is different from other races and ethnicities. And so that has to be acknowledged before we move toward any idea of liberation.
Ashay, come on, Zion.
So a friend and a mentor of mine, Tashara, who should be mayor of St. Louis, actually, but we'll get into why that's not, a Black woman, always says, if you solve for Black women and girls, like you solve for everyone. And so it's okay to talk about Blackness, because if you solve for Black people, like you're solving for everybody else too. And so I always think about that when I think about why people always feel like this need to lump us together so folks don't feel left out, because when good things happen to me, it actually happens to you, and you're not left out. So it made me think of that too.
Mm-hmm. I love engaging the people of color, women of color conversation, because we know that it was language that's been co-opted, right? So you had the Combahee River Collective and coming out and say, we need to form solidarity with global feminisms, right? And so the language that they created was like, well, then let's say women of color, because then that allows us to build with, the rural women in Colombia who are trying to get their rights in terms of their relationships to both money and men and land. And we can align with all our sisters in Africa as we negotiate being Black. And what does that mean for us here in the States? So it was noble cause that brought this language up. And I'm sure that, 40, 50 years later, what we're feeling is it's language, just to what Zion said, that's used to mask the issues. It's used to, one, center the white gaze, right? And divert white people from their own white supremacist delusions. And that is really important to think about interrupting the language. That I've also learned recently is, like, we're talking about white supremacy, and I've always talked about it as a noun, right? White supremacy, it exists. And it's like, no, we need to talk about it as white supremacist imagination, white supremacist illusions, because that's where they're living. And it's impacting us because they have the power to live within that delusion, right? They have the power to live within that imagination. And that's uplifting the language that Zion then gave us about the Black radical imagination, right? Where we could go, or thinking about Black futurity, right? When we start centering the fact that Black people are in the future, that means we have to end up move different now, right? And so what does that look like for us? And so one of the wrapping questions that I have two more, and we are taking up space and reclaiming all of our time. Just to let you all know, on the other side, the panel is scheduled to end at 8, but we're the last panel of the day, so we're gonna keep talking our stuff until we're done. Okay, y'all can watch, y'all can wait, and when we're done, we'll let you know. But I wanted you all to speak to Black futures, Black women in the future, what you would see, what you would hope, what you want us to be doing in the future. And most importantly, what do you think we should be doing now to get to the future that you think we should be in? Zion, are you ready to start us off?
Can you repeat the question for me?
What is the black radical future for Black women? And what should we be doing now so that we get there?
Well, definitely putting them in the forefront of the movement and just recognizing them. I've seen countless examples, especially in this day and age, like with the recent protest era, in the midst of the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all of those incidents. I've just seen countless examples, even here in Milwaukee, of how the labor of Black women has not been recognized and acknowledged when we are not just the backbone, but the forefront, and what really created and sparked up a lot of these movements. And I just feel like we first need to just kind of decenter all the attention off of men and their issues when we're really the ones that are struggling the most and have been beaten down by it. So I just feel that we need to recenter the focus.
Come on, that's a yes. Tracy, do you have anything to follow up that instruction?
That was just delicious. One thing I think about a lot is that, especially when I talk about abolition, is that it's important to remember that that struggle is constant. And on the other side of what we're trying to build is not a utopia. And there's going to be struggle there. It's just going to look different. And so when I think about like what my radical imagination is just having different problems. It's about not having to worry about our people being shot in their homes when they're sleeping. But it's also about not having people with guns show up when somebody's having a mental health emergency. It's about having the ability to stand up, speak up, and without having folks try to tear you down or think they know better than you. It's making space. It's allowing folks to speak for themselves, to advocate for themselves, and to be rooted in values. So when we make decisions, like I believe in collective decision making, I believe I don't have to be there for all the decision making. I think that if we all shared values and we had a way to speak about things with shared values, that I could say, Shavonda, girl, I'm going shopping. Why don't you go to this meeting? Put in a vote for me. You good? Because Shavonda knows how I feel about things because we're rooted in the same values. And so that's what I think about when I think about like a Black radical future for women, is that we are in the forefront, that we have different problems, that we are working together, and that we are rooted in shared value systems.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Shavonda, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are Black women wouldn't even be having these conversations about what our labor looks like, right? Because we would be able to exist uninterrupted. So my dream job, and nobody believes me, is actually to be a receptionist in a dental office or in like a big like office building where people are coming in. I'm like, oh, Dr. So and so, sixth floor. Like that is actually my dream job because I would be able to go do my work, earn a wage that is family sustaining, not have to check out of my 9 to 5 and check into my 6 to 10, ensuring that the Black women and children in Milwaukee are able to eat, are able to pay their bills, are able to, have car repairs. That work would no longer exist for me. So my goal is to work my way out of so that my granddaughter can choose between being a Dr. Monique Liston or selling snow cones on the beach, and that work being just as valued, um, in that they don't have to do the work to be about saving their own life, right? Because all of us are engaged in this work because we're working to save our lives. We're working to make sure that our grandchildren won't have to speak about us as an ancestor, that we're able to be there with them because we are not beating down, because we are not still dealing with health disparities, because I won't have to worry about my daughter maybe dying in childbirth. Like that is what the future looks like for me. And like Tracy said, different problems. I want Black women problems to be, we ran out of red snow cones today, sis. Like that is the problems that I want for us. And actually, I'm working so I can see that in my lifetime, honestly. And part of that is going to come from me deciding that I'm not laboring today. I'm done with this. I've done enough because if none of us on this panel have ever said another thing, never do another thing, never show up another place, never vote again, never sign another petition, never march another step, we have done all of our work. So if all four of us decide to pick up and go take over one of those beachside bars at Bradford Beach, and now we selling snow cones, that's our just due, right? And so that's the future that I imagine, that I'm envisioning, and that I am hopeful for the following generation. So look for somebody with my face in a couple of generations selling you snow cones, because that's what we about.
Absolutely. And Shavonda, I just want to add to that, or make sure that Tracy and Zion have a chance to respond to part of what you said. Because one of the things that I hold with me, like, if race work wasn't a thing, what would I be doing? And I definitely would be a chef somewhere. I would have a restaurant. I would cook, and all I would do is deal with food, talk about food, what y'all want to eat. Food is healing. That's all I would talk about,
That's
right?
my favorite game. I love that game. Yes, let's play.
Yes. So I want to offer the same question to you, Zion, and to you, Tracy. If race work wasn't a thing, right? We weren't spending our times laboring over Black history, Black politics, Black issues, Black futurity. If that wasn't a thing, and we just got to be our full, unapologetic, dignified selves, what would you be doing instead? What would be taking up your time? Go ahead, Zion.
I would definitely say esthetician work and being a skincare specialist, because for so long, like, I just feel like Black women need to be pampered. We go through so much, and so we just need to take time out of our days and just feel beautiful and just feel good. And so I've always liked skincare, and if race work was not a thing, I definitely would be, after high school, I definitely would work toward getting my esthetician's license, which I still plan on doing. But yeah.
How about you, Tracy?
I think about this a lot. I would be planning pop-up parties to celebrate people. Like, I would just show up in your town because we wouldn't have no money, so we'd have to live with capitalism, and just plan like elegant affairs to celebrate mostly Black women. And they would just be beautiful. They would be like, my biggest problem would be like, the ice wand has like melted. I need another ice swan up in here. Like, that would be the biggest problem I would have, because I love celebrating people and I love partying. So that's what I would be doing, planning pop-up parties to celebrate people all over the country.
I love it. We got snow cones on the beach, well skincare, pop-up parties, lots of food. I'm here for all of this decadence that would surround our lives.
This is my favorite game because what do we know? If we're not doing this visiting work, how do we know what we're working towards? I play this game. I love this game so much. And you find out so many interesting things. Like I would love to turn on my TV and I hear I blow bubbles for a living, and he removes ticks off of a dog, and then the couple is black. That's what I want to see, because we would have access to all the things that we need. So we wouldn't have to be asking ourselves these questions like, how is this happening? Because you would have access to all the things. So
yes, I love it. So to not keep you all night, although we could be talking all night, I just wanted to end with a final question. And it's always, as always, this is inspired by Shavonda, an ongoing question that she always asks me, and she asks Tracy often as well. I want you all to share, like, today's been a day. Like, even though this is our ongoing work, today has been a day. And so I was wondering if you could share what your self-care practice is going to be once we're off of this. What are you going to do for yourself? And to let the people know how to follow or stay tuned for the work that you're doing. Zion, you ready to start us off?
So after this, I have homework, but as far as my self-care, I plan on just going to bed and not doing it. Because it's just been a long day as far as what we've heard, and I just need some rest. And so as far as making sure you all keep up with a lot of the work I'm doing, definitely you all, I have friend me on Facebook. I don't have many friends, so I have room for like all y'all if y'all want to friend me. So please just shoot me a friend request. And as far as my work, I have pages set up that are dedicated toward the work I'm doing. So go like those pages and stay tuned.
Y'all remember this name, because Zion's who, when it comes down to it, we got to get right behind her. Tracy, your self-care practice and where people can follow your work.
So I am watching Lost for the first time. I haven't watched the series before. I was looking for something else to binge. So when this goes off, I'm going to watch some TV and get lost in a dumb show like Lost. And I'm really excited about it. I'm going to drink some more water because as Dr. Mo always says, we need to have our water together. So I'm going to drink some more water. And if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Tracy, TraceYECorder. So Tracy E. Quarter. And my header is Blackness Everdeen. Talk to me about the Hunger Games, especially if you're Black, because I really want to talk about that with Black people. And you can follow me on Instagram at Miss Quarter, and I post about my work pretty frequently.
Shavonda, your self-care practice and how people can follow your work.
Yeah. So I started my self-care already. We canceled a meeting earlier, and I'm just gonna watch TV and pretend like it's the 90s, and I don't know all the things that I know. But tonight I'm gonna wash my face really, really good. I'm gonna exfoliate, Zion. I'm gonna do the things. If anybody asks you for your homework, send them a copy of this recording. You're done. Okay, you've done your work. If they press on you, your primary care physician, a Dr. Liston, will write you a note. We got you. So I'm gonna wash my face really good. Get to bed early. Call my husband, annoy him. He left here a little concerned about me, so I'm gonna let him know that I'm okay. And I think I might spend the most time on social media. I don't know none of my handles. So find me on Facebook. I use my government name on Facebook because ain't nobody gonna check me. So you can find me using my government name. I am on Instagram. I don't know what my Instagram is. Also follow Love on Black Women on the social medias. Donate. I'm always fundraising because I got to give Black women all your money and my money. So I'm always seeking donations. And we do have a website, loveonblackwomen.com. We're on Facebook, Love on Black Women. Also follow That's What She Said, which is Tracy and I's podcast. Y'all know we delightful. Y'all laughed. Y'all was going to cry. You've been informed. So you can be listening to us weekly. This don't have to end here. You can keep following us.
I love it. And if you don't follow these folks, you're missing out. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Twitter. You can find them on Instagram. When it comes to my self-care practice for the evening, I was really thinking hard because I feel like if I hadn't said this out loud, I might have skipped it. But I think I'm going to do some yoga before I turn it down for the night. gonna make a commitment to doing that and drinking some more water. You definitely can find me across the internet with my full government name, and check me out on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram at a Black woman PhD. Happy to engage and to continue this conversation. I express my deepest gratitude to you all for taking time out of your day, especially a rough day, to engage in this conversation and to share your brilliance to all of these people. We might not have broken a record, but we did a lot because we have a consistent viewership throughout this session. So be really, really proud of that. Also expressing my gratitude for Milwaukee Film for inviting us to have this conversation and to participate. We can't wait to come back to the Black Health Film Festival or to another version of the film festival next year. Thank you so much for watching and for participating. All of the people who have participated in the comments, in the chat, we have read and keep a pulse on all of that. Shout out to some of our faves who have been present and engaging in the conversation. Again, we are thankful for you all. We look forward to continuing this conversation. And most importantly, we look forward to our own rest. Thank you so much and have a great night.
The 2020 Minority Health Film Festival offers a diverse variety of films and events that we just wouldn't be able to offer in the in-person cinema experience. But I think what really makes it unique is the focus not only on public health issues, but the issues that really concern communities of color. If you're looking for a reason to engage or to try it out, this is the perfect time. Just go to mkefilm.org/MHFF